A coding school told the public that 86% of its students were hired within 6 months. Its own reporting to investors said the real figure was closer to 50. For one-year group it was around 30. In April 2024, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau issued an order against that school and its chief executive, and the school is now permanently banned from consumer lending. I am not opening with that to enjoy it, but because of what the school admitted while the advertising ran, and because what failed there failed before AI had anything to do with it. Last episode measured the doors closing. This one is about the people outside them, and the industry whose job was to get them there. It is a consent order, so the school agreed those findings rather than fighting them. Here is the paragraph that matters. While it was publicly touting inflated placement rates, the school internally acknowledged that although its goal was 50 to 70% placement, it could be profitable instead by enrolling more students each month and placing fewer than half in qualifying jobs. Read that again. The business worked whether or not the students got the jobs. An internal memo from as early as 2018 said the school was unable to place students at scale. So the teaching was real, the tuition was real, the debt was real, and the outcome the whole thing was sold on was optional. Now the size of the layer that is quitting, because one dishonest school proves nothing. The bootcamp business owned by the parent company of edX began as Trilogy Education in 2015, and by its own account partnered with more than 50 universities and put over 96,000 people through its programs. In July 2024, that parent filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in New York. It emerged in September as a private company, every share cancelled, and deregistered a fortnight later. That is not a niche provider failing quietly. It is the operator that carried university brands into boot camps, going through a court. The last quarterly report that company ever filed carries the number. In the 3 months to the end of June 2024, revenue from its boot camps fell by $25.6 million, driven by a 40% fall in enrollments. Across the 6 months, the same measure was 35%. Two things about that 40. It is 1 quarter rather than a year, and it counts full course equivalents, students multiplied by the share of the course they completed, so it measures teaching delivered, not heads through the door. The same filing writes down the segment that holds the boot camps by $56.2 million, and takes a further $339.9 million against that segment's goodwill. The layer was not shrinking, it was being written off. Then, in December 2024, the company said why, in a post on its own site. Demand for entry-level tech roles has decreased, it wrote, while the pool of available, experienced tech talent has expanded. And then the sentence that names the decision. The long-form, intensive training that boot camps provide no longer aligns with what the market wants and needs. Notice what that is. It is the rupture I measured last episode, written down by the industry that existed to feed it, as its reason for leaving. It is signed by the company's chief financial officer, and I am giving it the weight of a company statement rather than a personal one, because it announces policy on the company's own newsroom. The training industry read the same market and concluded its product no longer had one. The honest ones went the same way, which is the part that should bother you. In May 2024, a small school in San Francisco published a post asking whether boot camps were still worth it. They had watched boom and bust for entry-level engineers, they wrote, and this was the worst they had seen so far. Their own outcomes were the lowest since the school opened, against a normal average of 80% within 6 months. That school later closed, saying it could not remain a viable business. In August 2025, 2 Canadian training companies, one of them a coding school, filed assignments into bankruptcy. The schools that lied are gone. The schools that told the truth are also gone. That is the training layer. Now the cue behind it. The first episode aired the top line from the annual survey of doctoral computing departments, new computer science majors down 13% in a year, to 33,490. Here is the part one did not air. In the same survey, bachelor's degrees awarded reached a record, 41,858, up 13%. Two numbers of identical size pointing opposite ways, and the record is the one that misleads. A degree awarded is an intake decision taken about 4 years earlier. So the record is the boom arriving, the fall is the future arriving, and the distance between them is the delay this series keeps warning about. 2 more instruments, and deliberately not the same instrument twice. A pulse survey of computing departments found enrollment falling at 62% of the 133 units that answered. It also found growth in computer engineering, cybersecurity, and AI, so this is not a flight from computers. The National Student Clearinghouse counts actual enrollments rather than surveying departments, and in the spring of 2026 it found computer and information sciences down 8.4% at four-year institutions, and down 11.2% at two-year colleges. In that same term, total undergraduate enrollment across all subjects rose 1.3%. Students are still turning up. They are choosing something else when they arrive. So the team, and as always this is our own worked example, labeled as such, not anybody's measurement. When they advertised a junior role in 2019, about 400 people applied. When they advertised the role that brought the new hire in, 40 applied. Around half withdrew before the end, and the reason several gave was that the work was AI assisted and they could not see what they would learn from it. Sit with that. The people the pipeline exists to carry looked at an entry-level job and judged it would not turn them into anything. The supply side is not only being starved from above. Some of it is walking away on its own. Now the compounding, and I have to be careful, because the obvious way to make this point is a claim I cannot source. You will see it attributed everywhere to one research firm, that cutting juniors now produces a shortage of seniors in 5 to 10 years. I read that firm's published work. It predicts computer science enrollment dropping by a fifth and the time it takes to hire a developer doubling, and it says nothing about seniors, and nothing about 5 to 10 years. So I will not lend it a source it does not have. The argument does not need one. A senior engineer in 2031 is somebody hired as a junior about now. On the 5 years this series has already aired, there is no other way to manufacture 1, and 3 layers of the supply chain are contracting at once. Which takes me back to the school I opened with, because that failure names what this series has been circling. What bootcamp sold was practice. Projects, code review, a portfolio, a curriculum written by people who knew the work, and at the good ones it was genuinely good. What they could not sell was legitimate work. Nobody downstream depended on the output, nobody paid for it, and the graduate's first real task was to persuade a stranger the simulation counted. While the entry-level market stayed open, the gap was survivable, and one school that measured itself reported a normal average of 80% placed within 6 months. When the market closed, the gap was the entire business. Practice with no legitimate work attached is not an apprenticeship, and no amount of curriculum fixes that. So, the self-check, and it is still a watch this. Build a pipeline ledger for your own organization, 3 numbers, taken 12 months apart. Doors, how many junior roles you actually opened. Applicants, how many people applied to them. Trainers, whatever feeds you, the courses, the schools, the graduate scheme, and whether they still exist. That is the artifact, and it takes an afternoon. You will know it worked when somebody asks where the next junior is coming from and gets a number back instead of an assumption. That is the supply side, quitting. Next episode, the question underneath all of it, because an entire industry watched its own pipeline collapse and nobody stopped it, and keeping it open was never anybody's job.